Hey everyone, welcome back to the Beyond Business podcast. I'm very excited about the conversation today with Brian Trainor. He's a serial entrepreneur who's also in real estate, owns several companies, but really the conversation gets deep fast. I think you'll see that from question one. And we talk about the adventure of starting a business and being ready for the opportunity. We talk about raising kids in that world, and we even talk a little bit about, towards the end, the spirit and being called that you're created to something. So really excited for you to listen and hear this conversation with Brian. Well, Brian, good morning. Thank you for sitting down with us. It is awesome to have you here. I know myself have been anticipating and wanting to do this for a long time. I know many years ago when we would meet more regularly, I always got little nuggets out of it. So no pressure, but I'm expecting a lot today.
Yeah. All right.
But yeah, I would love to start and just have you tell our listeners about yourself, a brief history of who Brian Trainor is and how he got to where he is today. That'll be 30 minutes, right?
Man, I think the first thing that I hear when I hear you say that a little bit is I'm aware enough to know of where you think I am or where you guys think I am, because you know me, and where other people think I am and where I think I am when I look in the mirror, and I just think those two things are so different sometimes that I really there's two answers, right? There's the answer that I think everybody else sees, right? And so that answer is a little bit had an entrepreneurial spirit, grew up kind of having to fend for myself as a kid, which taught me some great lessons in just failure and just that grind and a little bit of perspective on what is hard and what's not, and what really for me will tick the register as far as, oh, that's a stressful thing, right? Or that's hard. And so it's pretty hard to get me to kind of feel that emotion, right? I think unless you're after my wife or my kids, you can kind of piss off, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's not really gonna. So grew up a little tougher, and that's a whole whatever, right? But because of that, I think when I got to Colorado State, came on an athletic scholarship. I left the day after graduated high school, right? Had all my stuff packed, got here with no place to live, didn't know what I was doing. And by the end of the week, I had a place to live and two jobs, one of the jobs I got was from my roommate who didn't go to work, and the boss called at that time a landline, right? And he's like, "Hey, where's Ricardo?" And I was like, "I think he's tanning by the pool." And this is exactly how it went. And he's like, telling me he's fired. And I was like, "Cool, what's the job?" And he's cleaning a movie theater. And I said, "Cool, I'll be there in an hour," And so life was so easy. There was so much opportunity up here. And I think I've sort of had that perspective coming from a small town, kind of poor kid. So how I got here is I just always said yes, and I was always seeing these things, right? I feel like I'm at Disneyland when it comes to the business world and entrepreneurial world, really. There's just so many cool things. So there's a whole lot of stuff in there that, some people say we could unpack all of it, right? But the bottom line is I see a lot of great opportunity, and I've always taken it, and I've always tried really hard. And so I think on one hand, the answer a little bit, and that's so simplistic, I know, but for what some people see when they ask that question, how did you get where you are? That's the answer they ultimately want, right? It all really has to do with mostly my business world, and I make a lot of money, and they want to know, well, how, right? I mean, I think that's really the question, right? Because I'm still married, I appear happy, and I make a lot of money, right? I live on the house with some land, and you know what I mean? Stupid shit like that. Got a hot tub, whatever, So I think that's the answer to that question most of the time, is what people want to hear, right? And then I think there's another answer that has a whole different stream of kind of thought around just a lot of time spent thinking, and failing. And there's it's all kind of along the vein of the hard things that have been and the failures. And when I look in the mirror, I look and I see a very different, I don't feel full of wisdom. I was listening to a podcast from a kind of a pseudo friend, right? A connection that he's relatively successful. And thinking well, what makes him, what makes Ryan, I don't know, what makes him feel good about getting up in the morning and like putting his shit out there, you know, and feeling good about it, you know, and feeling like you're not a fraud in that way. So anyway, that's what I feel when you ask the question, right? As I know there's two answers there, so I get a little bit torn. And Justin knows me so well, and we've grown up, and you know me really well, and so I have this like other side of me that wants to kind of be really real about that and go like, well, what do you see? What are you asking? You know, really, what do you want to know? Because I think that there's people that want to know. There's two different things they're asking when they ask that. Usually, it's a checklist of what is successful, right? You know, and that is the whatever, man. I don't know. You know, like. I mean, I've been putting more stuff on Instagram lately, so I've recognized a little bit that's a little bit of it's a little bit of your resume in the entrepreneurial world. When people go to because I've hooked up with a couple people when I was out of town for a month, right? And I was traveling, and I went and hooked up with some people I thought looked cool, right? So I drove hours to go meet some different people in different industries just because I thought it'd be fun. And I checked him out on Instagram. I was like, this guy looks like he'd be cool to hook up with. So I just reached out and go, hey, man, do you want to have a cup of coffee? And I look at my own, and it's like there's nothing on there, right? But I could really make it cool. Like, I mean, in the last 3 weeks, I've slept in, 6 different states or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like Disneyland, 3 weeks off in South Carolina with the family, and, and fishing in Idaho. And I've been all over the place. I could really paint a really cool picture of my life, right? You know? So
that's cool.
Anyway.
Well, and
I'm sorry to take away from that answer.
No, it's like leave it to Brian to like flip the interview to the interviewer. Yeah, like all of a sudden he's interviewing you. And
I'm sorry.
It's good.
I'm sorry, but I just
close our laptops. Disregard the notes.
Yeah, I read your notes, and we'll stick to them.
No, I think it's good. It is. I mean, like that's from kind of a just business world, like that's something that is real, right? Like everybody has those two sides to their story. Everyone has the thing that they do when they come into the office. Yeah. And especially I think somebody who's kind of a serial entrepreneur like you, and you're battling or working on many different facets of many different teams. Yeah. So you have to kind of show up and be ready to kind of like be there for them, in any way. But there's also things on the background that like, what does Brian need? What's his, what's the thing that kind of, who's there to help him kind of thing. So it is. And that's with everybody, right? Like everybody's in that stage in some way or another. Yeah. So it's really interesting. One thing I would love to kind of just pick at a little bit that I heard that I think is really, it's something I work on myself. We've worked on together, is you mentioned opportunity, that you just kind of saw opportunity everywhere. Right. And I love that mindset. And I don't know if there was a moment in your life where that switched, if you were always like that, if there were times when you weren't like that, like just, I'd love to just kind of dig into that a little bit. Cause I think that is a really important thing for entrepreneurs, for marketing, for anything out there of like, what are you paying attention to? What are you focused on? Are you focused on that there's nothing ever out there? Or are you focused on like, I can't like get away from opportunity? There's so much coming in, whether good or bad. So, I mean, where was that shift? Was it always like that, or did you have to work on that?
I think that everything's colored with two colors. I think there's the failure piece that exists right there next to the opportunity piece. Yeah. And I think you pick one of the two up when you see something. Yeah. And so I think that most people, when they see what I see as an opportunity, they might see the failure that is probably going to come with it, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you've been on this journey with us with Beyond Blue, right? And this is one of whomever's, all four of you that are watching. Like, if you don't know, like I'm one of the owners, the founder, really, and Beyond Blue was my baby from the start. Not in the production side, because I don't know anything about how to do what you guys actually do. Yeah. But what I wanted for a company is what we are working on creating here, and it's still in its infancy, right? So, but you've been able to see those opportunities and those failures, and I really think the difference is that every opportunity that is there has kind of equal parts failure with it, right? Yeah. And in fact, like, you will actually fail a lot, right? Yeah. And so you have to go through, like, are you ready for 10 years of that, right? Like, an example I use is like the Olympic trials for me. I tried out 4 times. I mean, I trained for 4 different Olympics and never made it, And I think if I had known from the beginning that it would have just all been failures. I don't know that I don't know. I hope I would have done it still. But I don't know, right? Like you go 4 years in training and then like 3 minutes you're done and you didn't make it and you go home and go back to work on Monday, right?
Yeah.
And you have to be okay kind of like picking up the next year and going, let's do it again. Right. And so I think that I've been taught so many of those lessons along the way that I tend to see the opportunity and go like, I get it. I know it's a known quantity to me. Like I know there's a lot of failure with that and I'm okay with that. Right. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of stuff in there. I think there's a lot of ego in there that if you can let go of a lot of that, I think usually it's ego.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that poor kid thing like took that away. You know what I mean? There's like that like getting food out of a dumpster example that I use, like that'll get rid of the ego piece really quickly as a human. You know, you kind of let that go and you go like, all right, well, this sucks, you know? Yeah. And so, but the perspective that comes from that opportunity in life for me, has really allowed me just the freedom to be, I feel so much more free to experience life than people that are so tied down by all of that, you know?
Would you say that maybe it's less about the focus on the opportunity and more about not letting yourself get down by the failure?
Maybe, but I think as soon as you said that, my brain said it's just about the adventure. And that's what it's all about for me. It's just about going on an adventure with you guys, you know?
Yeah.
And like, we're going to learn about ourselves as men and women. And I get to see way deeper into your lives than I would have ever had we not gone down this path together. Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's about, and I know it's about the adventure for me. And that's why like everybody says business is just business, but like for me, it's not. Like business is literally family, you know, and you guys are my family. And then my other partners are my brothers. Right. And my sister works for us. And I really take the people I love and I bring them in. Like you didn't start here with us. Right.
Yeah.
And because of our relationship over 6 years of meeting for coffee once a week, here we are, you know? And so I think for me, it's about the adventure.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and I think with adventure, part of what makes an adventure fun is fear. In
Absolutely.
fact, I don't think you get to have an adventure without being afraid a little bit.
No, you don't know what's around the corner.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How did that play into, specifically in my experience with Beyond Blue? I got hired when there wasn't much of a company yet. And so I actually spent the first 2 months working for you, whether it was helping flip homes or wherever else you needed me and just kind of doing manual labor. But what in your mind told you, I mean, maybe it's just about the adventure, but let's take a chance on this kid who's finishing out college, has no experience in marketing or sales, and put him into this company with this other guy who's younger than him and has the marketing brains and has the drive. And so we're just going to figure out where it goes.
Yeah. And every time you ask me a question, there's like 7 different answers that I have in my head. For one thing, and this is just an overall observation about your guys' age, right? I think that the millennial generation it's so polarized and there's like nobody in the middle, right? Your generation either has people that are at the top, then they're like, fuck you. Like, I'm going to destroy people because you've been telling me I'm lazy, right? And sorry for my language there, but it's seriously like this chip on both shoulders kind of generation of like, you're going to prove that like everybody, like every 55-year-old that told you your generation was lazy, I'm going to show you. And then there's the actual lazy ones over here. And it's about like 95% of them I think are lazy. And hopefully I'm wrong, but I look across the way over there and I see your whole generation. And I go, these kids are awesome, you know? And so I think that part of me has really kind of found like a vein of a really cool mentality that fits with me in your generation. So that's a big piece of it, right? I think for you fit a formula that I like in my companies, and that is the only thing like you're missing is like you don't have like a broken enough family life. But like my ultimate like person to hire is like a male or a female. Male if they were a wrestler. Female, usually like a gymnast or something there, broken family, went to university, right? And then came out of that with some sort of drive and like that. And so they've failed, they've gotten comfortable with that. The broken family thing usually kind of there, although there's the hard parts that come with that, there's also the the thing I think that really kind of works on our ego and kind of helps us really come in and go like, I'm here to serve. Usually a servant's heart comes out of that too. So, but you fit the athletic part of that, and you know what I mean? You're at school, and I think anytime that there's an athlete that can come in, somebody that's had to like try and fail and try and fail and try and fail. You know, Justin and I's relationship started largely around being in a weight room, right? And I love the weight room. I love it with all my heart. I love the fact that like 45 pounds is 45 pounds here. And it's 45 pounds in, you know, Ghana, right? Or wherever you want to go. And I've got a buddy that trains, Mustafa, who trains in Egypt, right? And it's the same weight there, and he built his own weight rack, but it's still the same weights, right? Yeah. And I've got weights that were my wife's grandfather's, right? That my son will get to lift with his great grandfather's weights, and they'll be the same weights, right? So I love the consistency of the failure in the weight room, and so I think it's a good place to kind of forge, you know what I mean? So some of that mentality and some of that feeling. I think if we would actually use that in business every day, yeah, it'd be great.
I mean, that's that kind of seeking failure part of it, right? Like that is the weight room,
right?
That right. Like you are pushing to failure. That's kind of the purpose of growth within the weight room. And it's funny, it doesn't translate often to other areas of your life. So,
but it should, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it's my marriage, right?
Yeah.
I try and fail like every day, right? Yeah. And but I think that's what I little bit get to be with the businesses, right? I don't know, what are we at, like 6 or 7, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Companies and
count.
And it depends on how you're counting, right? And so if you wanted, you could push it, right? Because they all have different fun, stupid names. And we could talk about that. Careful what you name something, you know, because it might have a checking account someday and a tax return, you know. You never know. And so, but if I think that because of what we've been able to do with the companies, I'm able to almost act like that spotter in the weight room a little bit and go like to you and go ahead and fail. I got you, you know, and let's go try more of this. Let's try more of that, right? And so I think that if a company can get to where they really see it that way and go, let's go in there and let's just mess around until we fail, right? Until we really fall on our face and be okay getting back up again. I think you're gonna lead your industry first of all, you know, because you're in front, right? And you're gonna grow faster. And if you can get okay with failing, then you're not gonna. I mean, you talked about being stressed this morning when I showed up, and in my mind I go like, for a guy I love you know, and for you to be stressed about this company is not okay, right? Like it's not that important. It just isn't.
Yeah.
Right? Like we all make a living off of it, but shit, we'll get a job tomorrow, right? Like it's just not that important to stress. And whenever I hear about somebody staying overtime or working too much or any of that, I don't do that, right? And I'm the guy that like has the $250,000 payroll a month, right? That I have to, that kind of weighs on me a little bit, you know? But I go to bed and just go, it'll be fine, you know, because it will. I mean, and like I said, unless you're coming after my wife and kids, like whatever, man.
Yeah.
You know? So somebody got an appointment coming up.
Yeah, apparently. That's our notification to now break into.
It probably is that like hey, this is like get Brian to stop talking.
Yes.
Like,
that was Jared in the background.
Jared's like, I've been hammering this thing to get through. So Chris, I'm sorry. Well, I mean, but for sure, I have a knack for seeing people.
Right.
And that's not really an answer I can answer beyond just saying I'm good at that, right? I'm really good at being able to go like I can smell it on you.
Right.
And then I just make a team out of those people that have that smell. Right. You know, or have that vibration that I dig it. Yeah. And usually I can tell right away whether they're going to be with us for very long or not. And I haven't been wrong very often.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, kind of some of those layers of things of being like, you know, within the importance of like whatever business you're in and kind of the stress you may feel and the importance of that kind of thing. Like I do feel that's the part, again, we try to leave a little bit out about just going on and on about Beyond Blue in these podcasts,
sure.
but it's kind of that aspect of like, you know, I feel like we've, because of what we do, we're working with a lot of entrepreneurs themselves, people who are starting businesses, people who need to get their brands out, those kind of things. And for the most part, and I can speak for Chris as well, because I know he is just like me in this way, is how much we truly do care about our clients. And I think that's more of the stress of like making sure and wanting to do a really good job for people.
Yeah.
And instead of just like it being something that's like, I can just go, like, I'll go out and get somebody else or something like that. Like we do build like these really solid, strong relationships with these people. And so that's the part of it that I think for me, I continue to work on, of the stress that comes with seeing these people as partners in our own lives and building relationships and wanting to see them succeed, where it doesn't happen overnight. And we've talked about that on this podcast before. Like that's the fallacy that comes with, I think most people in the digital marketing space think like, oh, I'll just throw a bunch of money at it and it automatically returns.
Right.
And it doesn't. It's just like any other facet to a business of like, it takes some grind, it takes some failure, it takes some losses financially to figure out where do we need to now pursue to start seeing a return, and so that's a big piece too. I think that is unique about Beyond Blue. And so I don't know where I was going with that really.
Well, no, I think you're answering the stress question, because I kind of poked at you and said, man, don't stress, and you're going, hey, but I care about these guys, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's true. I think for me, if I'm struggling, and it probably is to do with you guys, right? Or the stress of you stressing, and then it's because you guys care about a client, right?
Yep.
I think that is something that will sort of kind of get at me first thing in the morning, right when I wake up, and that's the hard thing as an entrepreneur. I think you wake up with like just an automatic list running through your head. And there's you're never done. You're never ever finished. Like every day I end with like an infinite number of things I can do the next day to make any one of these companies better, and the more there are, the more kind of distance there is between me and winning, right? So I really have to give myself wins during a day. I'll give myself a couple of opportunities and say, if I get this and this done, I'm going to call that a win, and move on to tomorrow, And so that's usually how I'll roll with that. As an entrepreneur, that would be something I would want to tell the entrepreneurs, is like, give yourself an opportunity to win in a day. Pick 3 or 4 things, small or big, doesn't matter. And if you get done by 12 or 1, celebrate that, and then maybe do a couple more things or not. Go home. Right? Because we're never going to be done.
Right. I love that. One thing I do want to ask, which has been kind of rolling in my head since we started, that kind of pertains to what you just said, is balance. Like where, like from an entrepreneur, and like finding those things with working with not only multiple companies, but also family, and just doing your own stuff. Like, how do you work on the balance with like all of that in your head, as far as the stress, the things you're working on, the things that take your space, and then family and everything else?
I think that you can't underestimate the value of like 15 minutes just sitting on the floor with your son or daughter and playing. And that's like way over here on that answer. But what I mean by that is just that it can look, if you were to look at your calendar, it can look really heavy in one way or the other. But I think you can accomplish a lot with a really solid 15-minute time span with somebody you love. And so that's always been my encouragement to myself, is like, you aren't going to be able to go like, hey, I got 12 hours, I'm going to do 4, and whatever, and then go to bed or whatever. It's just, it doesn't work that way, right? And so for me, I think that I just try and balance those little bits of memories. If I'm talking, it's usually when I think about balance, I'm a workhorse. So if you just said grind all day, every day, go to bed, wake up, grind more, that's easy, right? Like, I don't have to try there. I can just do that, right? But when it comes to me really creating the relationships I want with my kids, because I do care more about that, right? And that's usually where I fail when it comes to balance, right? And so that's where I would say, like, don't underestimate the power of sitting down for 15 minutes with our kids. or your wife. Like I mean, you've talked a lot, like for a lot of years, right? And you know what I'm saying here. Yeah. But I had this kind of 1% rule, right? That it's just 1% of your day is 15 minutes of your day. Yeah. And I always go, if you say you love that woman or that man, and have you spent 15 minutes, like 1% of your day, like really sitting with them, like connected? And I think that even like the most, like us people that can be so busy still can find time, and people that have a lot of time they'll never actually do that, right? They have all the time in the world, but they won't spend 15 minutes of like pure, like just intentional time with somebody, and like really connecting. And so I think that's my answer, because balance is really hard to find. It is really hard to find. And I actually don't know that that's a real thing. I think that even if you look at like how God, works with the seasons right now, right? Like it's not balanced, right? Like it's really seasonal. And I think we really do have more seasons, so long as you add some good seasons in there, and be aware of the time when you're supposed to slow down and take some time to think and relax and get to that connection with your friends and family. So I would say balance is tough, but don't underestimate that 1%. Yep. And be aware of it. And when you write down, this is my 7 things that I find that I create priority around, then be accountable to yourself. Like, are you really spending 15 minutes? Right. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I love that. Thank you.
There you go. Yeah, I was thinking through, as we're talking about this journey you've been on, and I keep coming back to the word adventure you said, where it seems like that's what you focus on as you're 100%. Weighing an opportunity and guaranteed failures that are going to come. It's just an adventure. So we'll see if this question takes you into 7 different answers as well. But that leads me to believe through these processes of the companies you do have, you've had other opportunities that you said no to. And what does that look like in Brian Trainor's head when an HPP is starting up and you're looking at the potential of it and saying, is this something I want to invest in? Yeah. And is this something that's worth the adventure? Or or is it just kind of like a random, like you just trust your gut and go?
I think that within all that, there really is, you do have limitations on how much of yourself you can give. Right. And I, more than probably anybody, have found those edges, right? And so I think the biggest piece of it for me now is, am I willing to give myself to that, right? And does it really net the benefit that I want it to net out, right? Which really isn't money anymore at this point, I mean, don't get me wrong, like I gotta make a living, right? But making a living for myself is really easy, right? To go out and just make enough money to really thrive as a family for me is easy. So now it has to be able to not only like make me something, but has to really make other people something too, and create a positive impact in their life. So when I say no is when it doesn't affect our community right around here. I've had some opportunities, a lot of opportunities outside of really our region and our state to go, be on a board of directors of some other companies that I've run into that have kind of worked with me and said, hey, do you want to come help do this? And the answer is really no. It just doesn't, I don't know. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like an adventure. Sort of, I've got my tribe at this point, and I think for me, it's really about, okay, I've got my people. I had the opportunity with HPP to kind of grow. We started another company with, as we were part of a bigger company there, and set up operations all around the country, right? So I was flying all over the place this year in a COVID year. And I met with like some big name people, like, just, people that I was like, this is nuts that I'm sitting around, with these guys and investing, in the millions, with $5 to $10, $15 million, conversations. And just really was like, man, this isn't my deal. It's not my people. It's not this isn't the adventure I wanted to go on. And so I think for me, when I say no, it's just because it doesn't fit within, at this point, it doesn't fit within my tribe of people. Right. Early on, I based what I said yes to on my toolbox. Right. So what was the skill set I had in my toolbox, and what was this opportunity, and did they fit well together, right? And if I didn't have the tool, I would take the time or find a partner that would maybe have those tools to get where I wanted to go. But it was largely based on, it fits with me. It's a downhill move. I can do it easily, and it makes good money. That was it. Like, it had to make good money. I didn't really want to do it just because it was fun, because of that poor kid thing. Like, I was there to make money, right? Like, I wanted to provide a different life for my kids than what I had growing up. And so, but that changes, man. Like, that changes on that journey, right? It definitely changes. And so, so back then, I did everything. Like, I flipped trucks. I bought I bought a fleet of trucks when I was teaching high school, like, cheap, and I sanded them down, like, painted them when they needed painted, you know what I mean? Detailed them out and sold them, made like $500 a truck or something, I've done literally everything, and, but at this point, I think that it has to have that adventure, has to fit with my tribe of people, and has to fit my toolbox too. Like, I've stayed pretty well within what I know, and I was only able to start Beyond Blue with you guys I was able to do it because we had other companies that were able to support and let you guys kind of practice on, and once we felt like it was good and you were doing a good job for our other companies, then we kind of let Beyond Blue go take on the rest of the world, and Beyond Blue is still learning every day, I feel like, from my perspective. I think that, and unfortunately, like, your business over here, you're never going to be done. Like, it's changing. Like, rapidly. A roof is a roof is a roof, right? Like, you just put a new roof on. Like, it's not going to, 10 years from now, it may have changed a little, but nothing markedly different than what it's at today, but yours is Beyond Blue is a forever, like, and thank goodness, right? Because it is, that barrier to entry is a little bit harder here, so I think that's where we have more opportunity to shine. So right. I hope I answered that, buddy.
That was really good. Yeah. I think it's good. The only reason I'm going to ask this is because I know you well, so I know I'm really interested to hear the answer. But elephant in the room, your kids will not be growing up poor kids. So 100%. When you talk about this drive, maybe you throw your son in athletics. I know your daughter is a gymnast. Yeah. As a parent who has done, is doing a great job supporting his family and driving, how are you going to make sure that they get that drive and that peace when, fortunately, their father's taking care of them and loves them, and they don't have to worry about the next meal?
Yeah, that's for sure a challenge, man. I think that I call it the dumpster perspective, right? Because the freedom I have of that, allows me to walk into a room as a man and be like, I'm comfortable. And I see guys that have been given everything walk into a room and they're afraid of their shadow, let alone the other people in the room, That's a challenge. That is really hard. I can tell you that you'll figure this out when you have kids. They come out of the womb with their personality already. Mm-hmm. Like, from the day they're born, huh, Justin? Like, they're just them. And my son is just my son, and my daughter's my daughter. And I think my only goal within them is just to really get them to let that spirit of them shine, and to lead them, help them find the highest and best use of who they really are, And so they'll never have my perspective, but there's a lot of brokenness in my perspective too, Yeah. And so that my childhood has affected my marriage greatly, and just the journey I've had with my wife, and nobody wants to get too deep into some of that stuff, but I didn't really know what love was until I held my daughter, and I literally felt something in me change, and I went, oh my God, like, what is this? I always thought love was just sex, and that's making it a little more simple than it probably was to me at that age, but I didn't realize that I didn't actually know what love was with my wife until I had my daughter. And then I was able to share that love with my wife then too, that piece of me. And so my kids will never really know. They'll never feel that, but I'm great with that. Like, I'm excited to see them be kind of who they came out of the womb being, and the best version of that. I have the fifth sibling, Tyrell. I have an adopted brother who you've met, Tyrell. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. So he's in the Army, and he's a medic, and he just yesterday won Army's Best Medic, which is they compete regionally and then they go nationally. And so then I'm like the top 40 medics in the Army in the nation, and he won, right? And it's 3 days of like running and rucking and fitness and swimming with all of your gear on and just hell, right? And but he was a shithead when he was younger, you know? And for me, it was really great to get to see him find his thing and really latch on and become the best version of him, right? And so I think for me with the kids, I'll never get them to know and feel the way I feel and have that drive. But if I can get them to find their best version of themselves, they'll get pulled into that eventually, you know? And that's my hope, because there are definitely times when I want to like slap them for being kind of spoiled assholes, you know, because they feel that way to me at times when, you know, we just went to Disney World without telling them, right? We were already down there and I had a meeting in Orlando. So I just drugged the kids and wife with me, and we like surprised them with 2 days at Disney World. Right. And it would have blown my mind. Right. I mean, I hadn't gone on a plane or seen the ocean until I was in track in college, right? So my first plane flight was because of a track scholarship, right, that I earned. So I still remember looking at the clouds going, holy balls, you know, I'm like above the clouds here, you know? And then we stopped at a gas station and we were all in this van, the track team, and I jumped out with the coach was inside paying, and I ran across the highway and went and jumped in the ocean without even asking anybody. I'm like, guys, I'll be right back. And I just went out in my like gym clothes, jumped in the ocean, and then I got back and the coach was like, Trainer, like, what in the hell, man? And I'm like, dude, I have never seen the ocean. And I had a pocket full of shells, right? And so I got to experience that. And I remember thinking with this last 2 weeks ago with the Disney World thing, thinking like, this would have blown my mind. You know what I mean? Like a hotel room that looked like this, like, or at all, right? Like I can still count on my hands, like the number of times we went out to eat, like at a restaurant as a kid, you know? And so they'll never, ever have that perspective, thank God, right? And there's a lot of other things they'll never see either, you know? I mean, an empty refrigerator, you know, it sucks, right? But there's a lot of work I've had to do on the other side of that in my life to be a good father and a good husband, you know? And so I don't want them to have to do that work, you know? Although I've been able to find some great parts of myself. I know Hunter shared a story with you that I shared with him about trees growing up in a greenhouse that once they got, 5 years old, they would just fall over, right? And he probably told a different version, it's the same thing. But because there was no wind, their roots didn't kind of grow into that soil, you know, and get stronger. And so I think for me, like there was a lot of wind, you know, so the roots are strong, right? And so I think I have to provide opportunity for them to have wind, right? And so I have to let them go fail. So there's times when I can see my son doing something, I'm like, this is not going to go well. Mm-hmm. And I just let it happen, right? Yeah. And same with my daughter. And you put them in those opportunities to where, last night my daughter was crying because she was in ballet 1 and she got moved to ballet 2 and the teacher wasn't telling her she was doing a good enough job, you know? And she was like, well, I don't know if I am because she hasn't said it. And I'm like, hey, here's the deal. Like when you dance, I see your spirit shine. Like I literally can see this girl, like I can see it, right? I can see her glowing. And I just had to remind her, like, that's why you're there, right? You're there to experience your spirit and just who's inside of you. And that's the point. The point is not, to have your teacher say this or say that. And but because she moved into that level too, she's feeling that failure a little bit too. So that's good too. So I think we have, especially up here, we have lots of opportunity to provide room for our kids to fail in a sort of a safe environment, right? But I don't know. They won't, man. They just won't. Yeah. And I don't know the answer to that. And I think about that a lot. That's a good question because it is something I think about a lot because I do want my son to walk in as a man into a room and know who he is, right? And that's all I really have to do. I don't have to teach him how to be tough or how to grind, which I think is kind of a bullshit word used in the business world right now. But I don't have to teach him any of that. I just need to teach him who he is, and then he'll be okay, right? But he's largely influenced by a lot of different stuff now too, man. YouTube and kids and who's there, talks about Jeff Bezos all the time, and I'm like, that's not cool. Your hero can't be the richest man ever on earth, So, I was really nervous. And it's funny, man. I was actually really nervous about that. We were in line at Disney World and I asked them the question because it's a long line, of course. And I was like, hey, man, like, who's your heroes? I want to know because it was a loaded question for mine because I wanted to kind of shape that a little bit more and see if I couldn't put some guys in his life that were like not Jeff Bezos, you know? And dude, he said me, like, he was like, you're my hero. And dude, I was like, whoa, damn. Because I honestly did not, and I know this might sound weird, like this is that answer, like me when I look in the mirror, I didn't think he would say me. I just didn't, you know, because I'm hard on him. I'm his father, right? I have to like, you know, do all those things that tell him to go to bed early. I have to like tell him to put his crap away, get up, get ready for school, right? Like that's most of what parenting is like honestly redirecting your freaking kids all the time.
Yep.
It's exhausting, man. And so I didn't think he would say me. And so when he did say that for me, that was heavy in a positive way, right? I was happy to carry that. But I still think I have work to do on who his heroes are. I mean, he's smart enough to probably say the right answer. But I think
he was at Disneyland.
He was at Disneyland, right? Exactly. Now ask him this week and it's different, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. I honestly, like, you know, as a father myself, you know, I love that experience in my mind is life's best teacher.
Yep.
Right. But there's a little bit of a caveat to that only if you're aware of it, only if you're willing to pay attention, because you can have experiences and just let it go, you know, and not necessarily kind of take a moment to think about it. And the biggest thing that I've learned as a father in relation to this question is that you can't have your kids' experiences for them. So they're gonna have their own way of growing up. They're gonna be experiencing their own things that's going to shape the person that they are, and that's out of our control. As far as like forcing them to experience it a certain way, they have to experience it themselves, because that's the kind of the whole like helicopter parent type thing, you know, is really trying to protect them from failure, protect them from, in my mind, experiencing that.
Yep.
You know, and you have to allow that. They're gonna have their own way of growing up, and hopefully you can also kind of help shape that a little bit, or surround that with some of what we understand as adults now, and somebody who's experienced life in maybe a different way, but you also have to allow them to experience it.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
We should just turn this into a parenting podcast.
Well, and
I'll
it's,
start taking notes.
and
I'm the
there's-
only one here without
and
kids.
it's funny because like there's my wife, and she's such a smart lady, and she was reading something, and we were talking about, I think it's called like, is it lawnmower parenting, right? To
I
where,
don't know if I've heard that one.
and we'll just pretend that's it, right? Because it works for what I'm
Yeah,
trying to
that's
get
what
at.
Versa tape, say it more confidently.
Yeah, lawnmower. It's so the idea that you're out there sort of like cutting a way for your kids, and so you're taking all the barriers out of their way out in front of them. So you're not always on. Well, you're probably doing both helicopter and lawn mowing, right?
Yep.
But the parent that will go out and just make sure that there's nothing dangerous in the way out in front of the kid, so the kid doesn't see him right there, kind of touching. You know what I mean? But that you're out in front, like taking away all the obstacles, right?
Yeah.
So you go to their school and go, hey, Tommy gets his feelings hurt if you don't let him go pee every 30 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, versus having him have to navigate that relationship with the teacher and saying, hey, right,
Yeah.
this is a thing for me or whatever.
Yeah.
I pee a lot, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
I like that. I've always, honestly, I haven't heard this before. It's just something that I've always come up with, but I always, in my mind, think of parenting as gardening.
Yeah.
And really what you're doing in a garden is you're trying to create the best space to grow the most healthy fruit, vegetables, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of taking care of this space around it so that this plant can grow, kind of goes back a little bit to the tree and grow deep roots and get and be healthy, you know, but
100%.
but I can't necessarily just force the plant to grow fruit, to grow vegetables. I can't force it. All I can do is kind of cultivate a great space so it can try to have the best possible chance of growing really healthy fruit or vegetables.
And Chris, to your point though, like that's the same with the businesses, right? Is like, I know with Justin, I know like what, a year ago or two, I said like, you know, I think that, you know, to compare like to Mr. Miyagi, like Beyond Blue at that point was still kind of waxing on and waxing off on the cars, right? It was still practicing. It hadn't quite gone out and started to fight with its tools yet, right? And I think businesses are the same way. I think we really, our job is to let them grow slow I don't think that this like meteoric rise of any business is actually healthy. When you look at that, it tends to just kind of fall on its face. You listen to any real business podcast and they'll say, hey, it's a 10-year journey, be ready. And so for me, that's what these all are. I don't expect to pull any fruit off the tree for 5 years, 10 years, somewhere in there. And so we're, I don't know, right on that edge now with Beyond Blue at that 5-year mark, but, or give or take, I don't know. Is that, we're getting close. Yeah. Somewhere in there.
A little over 4, I think. Yeah.
And so, but that's where they really start to thrive, right? That's where they start to kind of figure out their own culture. They settle in. We typically will see our companies kind of go from like the 1 or 2 or 3 people that it was to start with, and then you'll sort of overhire. And this isn't a Beyond Blue conversation, it's just me and observation. We'll kind of overhire and we'll put people in place where we should have maybe put systems, and then we end up creating good systems, and now we find we have leftover people, and that's when we kind of grow into those people, right? But if they're not the right person in the right seat, then they have to go away. And they want to go away. They're usually just too afraid to say it, right? And I really hate having to like let somebody go when I'm like looking at them going like, you want to leave, just say it. And they're like, no, I'm going to make you fire me. And I'm like, damn it, like we all, and then they get mad at you and they're like, damn it, dude, you don't want to be here, you don't like this, and I don't like watching you not like this, right? So, but yeah, it's that garden kind of idea with businesses too, honestly, to circle back to the point of your podcast, I think here is you provide as good enough space as you can for them to grow.
Yep. And that's what you and I have talked about this a lot, but one of my favorite things to say, and I think I've said it on the podcast previously, is there's no such thing as an overnight success, right? And I think I may even got that from you, but it's just that
from somebody else.
Yeah, well,
right?
Exactly. Yes. And it's just the fact that, they all of a sudden you see the results of their hard work or the effort that they put in previously, that maybe one night all of a sudden catches fire, but there was still a healthy amount of effort put in before that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, then that definitely ties back to like the grow slow, take advantage of what you can when you have it, but know that there's going to be some ups and downs.
There are.
Yeah.
And you have to have those, right?
Yep.
So that you're ready for the big thing when it hits. So when I sit down with a young man, something I like to say to them a lot is like, I hope you don't meet the woman of your dreams today because you're not ready for that woman to show up in your life, And I just talked to a guy that got married recently that called me and he said, hey, I want you to know that quote kept like bouncing around in my head, And it's the same with business. Like, you better hope you don't get that real good client now because maybe you're not ready for that client, And so what journey do you have to go through? What failures, what things have to happen so that you're ready for that next one. And if you can look at them that way and go, hey, this is getting me ready for the thing that I'm really supposed to be doing, right? Then I think you look at those things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Those challenges.
Yep.
Because they're just going to come. They suck. They're just hard. They're hard, right? So like I said, I go to bed just fine, but I usually, like, during the day, definitely, like, and my job now is just the shitty stuff, right? Like, it is if I get a call from any one of the companies, it's usually bad. I'm not on anybody's team anymore, so I don't get to celebrate very often because of where I'm at. Like, so I don't get to participate on the team level anymore, really. It might, but you guys know that. I'm not here for those good things. It's usually just if there's a problem. So, yeah.
Well, as we kind of move to wrap things up, we could keep talking for hours, but
yeah, man, come on now.
Gotta let people go. This is kind of my new favorite question I found when I was preparing for this and coming up with some creative things, and it's something along the lines of, if you were sitting in my position interviewing you, what's the one question you wish we would have asked or topic that you wish we would have touched on? If we nailed it, great, but
that's a really good question. I want to answer this. I'm not going to avoid it because I think it's great. I just don't want too much silence on the.
Jared can put in some filler music.
You can put some filler music and just cut that out.
It'll be like the Jeopardy theme song in there. Will be like,
man. I think that this for me would have changed a lot over time, right? I think that my feeling about that question of the question, has changed a lot through my journey, I don't know. I guess my temptation would be to go like super deep, and not ask anything technical, because I think the technical stuff is all in a book somewhere. I read a ton, I consume information just as much as I can, right? And so I think that what I found is that you can go out and get most of what you need to do that. My goodness, man. I don't know. Like, I think maybe something around like, how do you identify what the adventure is, or how do you find your adventure? How do you find something that's, I think so many people, I really want this to mean something when I answer this for you. I think that so many people really struggle with like, well, what is my thing? You know what I mean? Like, what is my, what's my gift, right? And so I believe strongly, and that we are created, like, beings here, no matter what religion you choose to pull that from. And I've coached a lot of men, first of all, right? And the ones that don't believe that they're created for something really struggle. Really, really, really struggle. So I think that I would just say, like, I think if you were to ask me the question of like, how do you find your thing? How do you find your kind of your path, and how do you stay on the path? I would tell you that it starts with some level of belief spiritually. And I'm not going to tell anybody what that needs to be or where they're going to find that, right? But I believe I was created, and I was created with a gift. And I think that allows me the freedom to go, like, I have something to give to this universe, you know what I mean? And to you and to all of you guys, and that I'm supposed to wake up and give that. And I think that simplifies all of this down to just the most basic, you know what I mean? From a spiritual level, I'm supposed to wake up and give myself to the men around, for me specifically, to the men around me that I love, and you guys are two of them, you know what I mean? And so I think that's what makes it work for me, is just knowing that I'm, that I've been given something, that I didn't have to earn it, that it's just in there, and that my only job really is to like kind of turn those switches on and let me be more me. Same like I talked with my kids, right? Is just that. So the men that I've coached that don't have that in them, it's a struggle, because all you really, then it really is, how much money can I make? It really is. You know what I mean? What's the next car I can buy? And what's the next thing I can do? The next Instagram post I can make? And so, not that, men of like, for me, that Christian faith, but we're all different. Me and Justin are different on that, but I love him. And this is not really, and that's not what we're talking about, but I see as much Jesus in this guy as almost anybody I've ever met in my life. You know what I mean? And so, but it doesn't matter where it's coming from. I got distracted thinking about Justin, but because he knows
and I'm not the second coming of Christ.
He's not. But because he knows he's here for a purpose, and he has a spirit that you know what I mean? That's really the thing that makes it easy for me, when you don't have that. And we've got friends that are that way, and we've got one specific friend that I shared this with one day. I said, you're created for something great, right? And he goes, I don't know about that, and I said, well, man, this isn't going to go well for you. You're always going to keep finding, empty corners in this life you've created. And so, I do think that's probably it. I don't know what the question would be that would get that answer, right? But that's my answer.
The question's hidden
I
in there
like it.
somewhere.
The question's in there somewhere, man. But I just see a lot of people really unhappy, man, that are chasing somebody else's dream, you know, that isn't based on what they're meant, the gifts they were given, and they're not sharing their gifts, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's really good. We sincerely appreciate the time. This was really good, and are definitely looking forward to having you back in the near to far future.
Yeah.
Got to make sense of other
Careful
people.
with those questions.